Hey beautiful human, welcome to episode 3 of the Real Love, Real Relationships series. I'm super pumped to have you here, and for those of you who are new to the tribe and to me, my name is Nikki Syme and I am your leading love and relationship coach. I'm all about empowering men and women in love to ensure that you get to have the most incredible, amazing relationship that doesn't just survive, but thrives. So Real Love, Real Relationships, why did I create this series? Keeping it super simple, I was sick and tired of seeing the perfect relationships on the highlight reels of social media, only to learn that these perfect relationships were all falling apart. I think I'd seen about 4 in the space of a few months, and I was just like, okay, this has got to stop. I've got to create some change here. And this soul calling came through and was like, Nikki, do it. Like, you've got to create this. So this series is all about giving you a behind closed doors peek into what it actually takes to make a relationship not just survive but thrive and go the distance, right? Because there's a lot of us out there that are striving for this perfect relationship, and when we're not getting it and we're not attaining it, it's like, well, what's wrong with me? And we're falling into that there's something wrong with me experience, or that mindset that just isn't the truth. It's just that we're being misinformed by this beautiful social media platform, and it's about time that we actually just drop that veil and really get like honest and real about what it takes to make a relationship thrive and go the distance. So I'm incredibly passionate about this series, and I hope that you enjoy it. This week I am joined by the incredible Kristie and Clint X Morgan. These guys are amazing, absolutely incredible, and I just loved how willing they were to really dive in, share their truths, and even like triggering each other in the process, right? So after this, we recorded this, they had some stuff come up in their relationship as well, which they then went on to actually process and work through together as a team. So they shared their journey from where they were at when they first met together and, struggling to pay for food, eggs and bread at the supermarket, to building a 7-figure business together, having a beautiful little baby called Vinny, becoming parents, working together, playing together, like doing all of this stuff together, and how they actually navigate this experience, because that's a lot, right? Like, my partner and I, we don't work together and we have our stuff going up. So it's a really beautiful insight on how they actually commit to each other, themselves, and the effort it takes to make their relationship not only survive but thrive. So I really hope you enjoy the episode, my loves, and I will be seeing you at the end for a little wrap up. Enjoy. All right, well, welcome guys. Thanks for being here. I'm super excited to have you joining me on the show.
Yay, thank you so much for having us here. We're so excited.
Yeah, ready to get raw and real and to share what it really takes to make your relationship thrive.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Awesome. So where I actually want to start is by you guys just giving us a little bit of a rundown on how you met and what was going on in your life at the time when you came together.
Awesome. Well, we met on Tinder. Big up to Tinder. Shout out to Tinder.
We swiped the
Gary
right
and I did too.
Yeah, we swiped the right way.
Best swipe of my life.
So I was pretty much, acting like it was a full-time job on Tinder. I was like so committed to meet my man. So
and I was
like,
a speed swiper.
He was speed.
I swiped everybody, then go back and unswipe the ones that I didn't like.
Yeah. So I was like, I was chatting to like 300 men, and I was like, I was all in. And then
I made it.
I gave my number to one man only, which was this guy. And
as if you only gave it to one.
I
man.
did. I literally only gave my number to one man.
So how did the other guys contact you? Just on Tinder?
On Tinder. And then I get this call randomly, and it was him, and he was being really awkward on the phone. I was like, oh, this is interesting.
I wasn't being awkward. I was being myself, right? What was awkward about it was that I had called her, and all the other guys were texting, but I was like, I'm just going to call this chick and suss her out because I want to see if she's the real deal.
That would have been a shock too, because you're like, what the hell is this dude doing? Like, it's so foreign these days, right?
yeah, why is he calling me?
Yeah.
Anyway, we had this little conversation, that was kind of it. And then we added each other on Facebook. And I actually moved to the Gold Coast a couple of months later, and I knew nobody, not one single person on the Gold Coast. And I was like, oh, that guy from Tinder lives down here. And I was like, I'll give him
the guy from Tinder.
Yeah, I was like, I'll give him a message and see like if we can catch up and have a coffee or something, so I can get to know some people. And so then we met up and we had like this interesting date where basically we both were like triggered by each other.
At the time, I was working for this guy, and I was house sitting his house and minding his cat. And it was just like this guy was like a successful entrepreneur, and he had this really nice house. And so I just sort of didn't tell the finer details that it wasn't my house. I was like, come around to my house for a tea, and she comes around, and I thought,
this guy's balling.
Like, this guy's balling. So we had a tea and we had a smoothie, and
one thing led to another. And then, yeah, basically we...
So how did you feel when you found out it wasn't his house?
Well, I saw this like, because at the time I was really into personal development and growth. And that was like a really big pivotal like point in my life of like reading all these like successful books. And so I walk into this house and this, handsome man has this success book about millionaire mindset or something like that on the table. And I was like, oh, like nice house. And like he's into the same kind of books as me. And then I found out that it wasn't his house. And I was like, oh.
Was it his book?
I think so.
I think it was my book.
Yeah.
What do you do? And then I found out he lived at home with his mum. And I was like, okay, well, that's a bit of a different thing than what I thought. But anyway.
I thought that, because when I talked to her on the phone, I was like, oh, this chick sounds like a real bogan. And then up North Queensland, I was like, and anyway, so when she came round, she wasn't a bogan. Like, she was a little bit of a bogan, but she was like really interesting and really attractive. And I was like, oh, this chick's actually like, she's legit. And so we had a good time and a good night. And then it was an interesting experience from there. That's when it got really interesting.
Yeah. So to kind of keep it short, we didn't get together straight away. We had a lot of triggers. He's basically always been a mirror, and I've been a mirror for him. So we've always like had this reflection, and had to work through a lot of stuff together. So it's really interesting now being on a relationship podcast, kind of perfect really. And so we didn't get together straight away. We had a lot of stuff in our way. We really like had this almost like a soul contract where it was like, we had to be together, but yet we were we went through a lot of resistance. And then I ended up going out with somebody else. And then he moved to Sweden to find a European wife. Like all this stuff happened in the space of a year. Yeah. And then he came back from Sweden and came to visit me. And in that time, we had like this pivotal moment where we just really realized, we had this experience where we just really realized that actually we're totally meant to be together. We have this soul contract that we need to lean into, or that's available for us to lean into if we desire to go in that direction. And so, yeah, so it took us kind of like a year and a bit to actually get together. And then he never left. And we've been together since.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Just kind of hung around.
Yeah, exactly. And got married, had a baby, and all the things.
All the things. So I wanted to, because you guys obviously are in a relationship together, and you also have a very successful business together. And it hasn't always been that way. It's something that you guys have always strived for together, but early on it was a lot different, right? So can you give us a little bit of an insight on what was going on, like when you kind of first got together in regards to like careers, money, business, that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So basically when we very first got together, we were broke. Like we were struggling entrepreneurs. We had these big visions.
She was living in her car.
I was like, I had like all my shit in my car and all my stuff, like literally. Sorry, Nikki.
That's okay.
This bit?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Yeah. Our doorbell's ringing.
Doorbell. There's a helicopter going over anyway, so that's perfect.
Yeah, perfect. So maybe just ask that question again and then we'll. Hey, Rory.
What?
Well, I was just going to say, if the doorbell rings again, can he kind of keep an eye on it?
He's on it. He's got the boys pushing him around.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe we could just I'll turn the buzzer down.
Because Tamika's also coming over. Okay. Maybe turn it off and then Tamika can message him. And turn it back on too.
Oh, Rory, we're turning the buzzer off. So Tamika's come around and just get the message.
Sing hallelujah. Sing it, sing hallelujah. All right, let's do this question again.
Yeah.
Cut the buzzer.
All right, cool. So you guys obviously met and you have now created this beautiful, incredible business together, but it hasn't always been that way, right? So I would really love for you to share with us a little bit about where you guys were at in regards to like finances, business, career, all of that when you first got together.
Yeah, so we when we first got together, we were actually like struggling entrepreneurs. So we were broke, and we were driving around in a car that would break down the lights. We both had a very big vision for our life. We had really big dreams, and so when we came into each other's life, which was why I guess we also had this soul contract, was that we actually had a very similar vision. And I think that's really beautiful in relationships when you have a similar vision and a similar path. And so that was something that always really excited us, was talking about, you know, visions and dreams and, you know, what we wanted to do with our life. And yeah, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't all roses. Like when we were, you know, Clint had just come from living with his mum. He was living in Sweden for a couple of months, but didn't really have a lot of income coming through. And so then when he came back,
I was living the dream.
He
Yeah.
on Centrelink, and I was, you know, I was doing some contracting work, but really not enough to really be thriving. And
well,
it was a challenge.
When we first got together, I was very like, Kristie was like working very hard at the time. Like you were doing the events and things like that. And I had it was sort of like we had this role reversal where I was like probably more in my feminine. I was just like trusting and going with the flow in life. And I was over in Sweden. I was just like always allowing and trusting that money would show up. And it always did. Like I was always provided for. And I was living in this very like abundant space, although I was like in complete essentially poverty. I was just living like week to week or meal to meal. But also turn up and I just manifest things, and it was always very like, you know, I'd manifest a meal or I'd manifest money for rent, or it was always just getting by, but I was in this like beautiful flow. And Kristie was like working really hard, hustling, and I was like I was sort of, we're making probably about the same money, but you were working really hard, and I was just like spending my time on the beach and you know, meditating and just relaxing. And
so how did that impact your relationship? Did you fight a lot at that time?
We didn't see eye to eye, like, because I had this way of living and it worked for me.
Yeah.
Kristie had this different way of living, and
the hustle
and grind sort of way of living, and that worked for her. And I was looking at that, I was like, man, well, like, you know, just trust, you know.
What do you do?
And she's like, you're crazy. But then she's like, but it does always just show up, you know. So it like at the time it was all right, but then it did turn later down the track. It turned into like a bit of a challenge, because I had this like big purpose and mission, and I was like quite in my feminine, and I was disowning my masculine side. And so I had to then go on this journey of like realizing that, and I had like, it just kept showing up in our relationship. It was a dynamic challenge. And then so I went on the journey of then like activating my masculine, and I did this Fight Like a Pro thing, started boxing, and then I, you know, really got committed to my vision and my business, and started making sales, and sort of went then like right into the masculine side of things, and then had to come back into balance of like balancing the masculine and the feminine.
So how did you find that?
Well, we nearly broke up. Like I said to him, you know, you need to get your shit together. Otherwise it's over. Because
otherwise you're out.
We've just found the whole dynamic thing. We still do find the whole dynamic thing, you know, something that we're constantly juggling with, of like that feminine and masculine energy, and like, you know, when we're most attracted to each other, and like, you know, there's just like so many, especially now having a business together, and for me being like, I guess not like a, you know, like a, how do I say this not in the most politically correct way, like, you know, like I don't have that real like motherly instinct of wanting to stay home and just look after babies all the time. Like I have this,
I'm
like,
with
I
you,
love
girl.
but I also really love being a businesswoman, and I have really big visions, and I get excited by projects, and I get excited by impact and things I want to create in the world. And so, you know, there's still a lot of like different dynamic stuff that comes up that we're constantly, you know, working through. But yeah, so that was kind of like, we nearly broke up back then, and that was like a big change in our life. So what Clint did is he went and did work with a man mentor, and really brought out more of that masculine side.
And how did you find yourself relating to him when he was doing that? Because if you're heavily in your masculine and he's rising into his masculine, did that automatically kind of drop you more into feminine, or did you butt heads for a bit until you kind of found that harmony?
Butt heads. Oh, both.
Yeah.
Yeah, both. But it definitely helped. So he really went on this journey of stepping into his masculine. And
did you find that more attractive?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
just sorted it. He's just sorted everything out. Like he had previously all this amazing potential, and he was living in this really awesome, abundant way, even though he was really broke. But seeing him then fully step into his power and his really owning that and becoming, like almost like becoming this king of like, have this warrior energy and like, I can do it. I can bring everything that I desire to life. Like I can be the man, I can be the provider, I can, be the father. And he just like really stepped into that energy. And that was so attractive as a woman to be like, cool, like, now I if I want to, I can surrender a little bit as he kind of takes that lead. And so, yeah, it definitely made a very big difference.
Awesome. So that point of breakup where you were like, dude, it's got to change. Was that when you just went, Clint, fuck, I'm possibly going to lose her here, that I have to step up? Or was it already kind of stirring within you?
I think I was probably in denial.
Yeah.
And like I remember having this conversation where I was actually like, because I think, I don't know, it's hard to explain what it was, but I actually started getting like depressed. And I think it was like, maybe like in the wounded feminine side of things. And like I had this purpose and this mission, but I wasn't fulfilling it. So that was like.
Where did that come from, that dropping deep into your feminine? Like, was that a learned behavior that you kind of seen, or like was your dad heavily in feminine, or what kind of led to you getting to that point?
Well, my mother and father split when I was 12. And that's sort of like the time. And this was a big thing that like actually woke me up and made me realize what had happened. I had a conversation with this mentor, and he was like, well, at the age of 12 is when most men are initiated into being a man.
Okay.
And they'll like say like, in Eastern civilizations or tribal, cultures and things like that, they would take the boy away from the tribe, away from his mum, and then initiate him into manhood. And that at 12 was when my dad left. Right. And so my mum and dad split up, and I only saw my dad here and there, and it was a very toxic split. It wasn't a very amicable situation. And so I was like, I don't want to be like my father, so I disowned a lot of those traits, good and bad, from my dad. And so I then, was raised by my mum, which was awesome. And she taught me love, and, she really, taught me how to be unconditional. And, like I learned so much amazing things from her. But then she couldn't teach me how to be a man, so that I was lacking male father figures in my life. Like my dad was around, but I didn't see him too often. So he was a beautiful mentor, but it's like he wasn't there all the time. So, and plus there was that toxic energy from the relationship. So I was like, I disowned a lot of that. So I had to then go and heal a lot with my father, and then also my mother, and then go, okay, cool, and start owning those traits again, owning them, and then embodying them. And, so it was a big journey. It's been a big process, but it was a really empowering one to like then come back and realize it and see it. And when she sort of pulled me up, it was sort of like I was in this sort of like this dynamic in my own mind, and I was like going around in circles, and I had to like really have courage in that moment to like drop my ego and own it and pull myself out of it. And I really saw myself from a higher perspective and went, I'm playing the victim here. And I pulled myself out, and I remember that time we're having that conversation at 1122, and then I just like, in that moment I changed. Something happened, and I then started taking. It didn't just happen overnight, but it's like I then started going on a different path and taking different steps, and that led me from one thing to another, which I then went on that masculine journey, and it's been really powerful ever since. But then what happened is I swung too far into the masculine. I was like, I disowned all the feminine stuff. I thought, women were. Anyone was in their feminine, they were pussies, I went like too far on that spectrum. Then I had to bring it back into balance. And now I feel like I have a really good balance of the two. And I love playing in the feminine, and I love being in the masculine.
Yeah, awesome. So I imagine there would have been a lot of stories attached to what being a man meant as well, in regards to what you experienced with your dad and kind of healing around that stuff.
Yeah.
So what was like early on, what was the sex like? Like, obviously, if Kristie's heavily in her masculine and you're in your feminine, was there sex? Was there much? Was it good? Like, compared to what you experience now? You're just like, damn, I'm taking charge.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, sex is good. Yeah.
Has that changed at all since that kind of dynamic shift?
I would say, like that's probably a big area that we are now, focusing on is because, you know, like having a baby and having this, and also like my biggest challenge has been more in dropping into the feminine. So even though through that huge journey, like I've still found that a huge challenge for me. It's like, it's kind of like almost I know when I play in that space, like when I do surrender and when I really do drop in and all of that, like my life is so blissful, but it's like my natural response is to play more into the masculine energy. And so this is like a constant thing that I'm working on. And so, yeah, I would say, like, especially for me, like I lost a lot of sex drive after having a baby, and then, you know, running a really busy business and that kind of just exploding, and, you know, us trying to always like kind of keep up with it. It just went on its whole own almost tangent, this business, and us trying to kind of, you know, keep up with that growth. I found, you know, that I had a lot of work to do around, just around, like, I guess I was coming from a place of like, not able to kind of, really drop in. And so I was like really like quite hard and quite, you know, like,
just get it done.
Yeah, just get it done. And, you know, I don't have time for it, but I didn't have time for you, and I don't have time for I just have to get this done. And, you know, like I was tired, and you know what it's like being a mum, like you don't like sleep that much, and you always have a baby on your boob during the night. And so, I found
the last thing you feel like doing is having sex.
So it's almost like having to like relearn that area of my life. And, you know, after getting used to being a mom and losing that kind of drive for a while, and then like balance, you know, like, it's just an interesting area to balance, and also hearing that other women really struggle with that as well. So
absolutely. And it's that whole switch off thing, right? Like I've noticed that Gary will be like, let's go. And I'm like, but I've got to do this, and I've got to do this, and I've got this to do, and this to do, and this to do. And it's like that actual switching off of the mind to drop into the body and actually be present while in being intimate with your partner. Like that's the most challenging thing, I think, for women, especially when you add kids to the mix as well. Like it's like, you know, and those times where they're downstairs and you're like, quick baby, let's go. Like, let's get one in now. It's like, you kind of learn new ways to make it happen, I guess, and get it done, just to grab that little bit of connection, especially because I know that for men, like sex is how they connect, right? But then to have those love making sessions where you can have the time to drop in and really be in your feminine and let your man be in his masculine. Finding that time was like, what? It's full on, right? So let's talk a little bit about, sorry babe,
a whole different ball game with kids.
Whole different ball game. And then you guys go and throw in this incredibly successful business into the mix as well. So I would love to know how, you know, you guys keep your relationship and your business relationship separate. Is it possible? Like, and do you find, what are the challenges that you find with that? Because it's just like, no, it's not possible.
So this is definitely an area of our life that we are, you know, constantly wanting to improve on, because definitely at the start, when it was like, you know, had a baby, had this really successful business that was booming, it was like very hard to kind of keep everything separate. And
because when you found out you're pregnant, you broke, right? You were like, and you, I remember you saying something to Clint about you need to get a job or something, otherwise.
Yeah. So totally broken when I was pregnant. We had about 5 months left until baby was born, and that's when we went all in and we created this, you know, really successful business in that time. But with that, it came like that challenge of like having like being able to keep everything separate. And I like, even now it's like, it's still like a thing, right? Because we have a home-based business, and so sometimes it is, you know, like we have a lot of freedom in our life, and we also really love the projects that we work on. So even though we probably could just like lay on the beach all day, like we don't really, that doesn't really inspire us. Like we love to be doing things. We love to be working on projects. We love to be bringing things to life. You know, we've got all these sorts of things we want to be doing. And so, trying to keep that balance of like, okay, our relationship's our relationship, and then, you know, our business is our business. And, you know, managing that by having a home-based business where we are at home, where we do everything from here, and we have our family life from here. So I definitely feel that that's still an area that we are working on, and it's definitely something that we're very conscious of like, you know, like even we implemented this thing a while ago where you know, our family time is until 10 a.m. in the morning. So our nanny usually comes around 10. And so before that, that's where we have our family time. We go for a walk and we make sure that we're connecting with, you know, each other and our baby, and, you know, that there's no phones and there's no distractions and all of that, and that we have that time together. And then, you know, weekends as well. So we used to kind of just like work on weekends, and now it's like getting really dialed in. I'm like, no, that's our family time. Phones are off. We're focused on each other. We're focused on our baby, and we go and do, you know, lots of fun stuff together. And so, yeah, but I definitely think it's, you know, there's always room for improvement in that area. And we're definitely aware of, like, you know, how do we create more of that separation of like business is business and, you know, family is family, and having that completely separate. While still, you know, obviously it doesn't mean that we don't ever have to talk about business or visions or anything like that, but having that really clear, distinct separation, you know, I think is very important.
Yeah. So, you know how you said like you had rapid growth in the business. What kind of challenges and hurdles did you have to like grow through, I guess, or deal with in that process? I imagine like for that kind of thing, because I remember it just going boof, like it just kind of blew up really quickly. Was there any kind of major stuff that came up for you, and how did you kind of navigate through that?
In our relationship?
Yeah. Was there stress added with that? Like everyone kind of looks at that as like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It was like this.
Yeah, it was crazy.
We quickly went from this like dynamic at the time where we were really like struggling, and got to the point where we didn't have money to buy food or put fuel in the car. And but at the same time, we were making all these sales and like making 10 times more than we'd ever made in the past. In like, so we had this like affiliate commissions are waiting to come through, also living in poverty. So we're in this like thing of like abundance, but also this experience of lack at the same time. It was really bizarre.
And waiting for money to
come in. But I was like, and Kristie, I remember her being triggered by that. And I was like, darn, this is it. It's done. We'll never go back to that situation again. And we didn't. We haven't been back there again where I was like worrying about food or whatever. We still have money challenges and troubles, and, you know, it doesn't go away once you start making more money. But it's like those sort of baseline poverty stuff was gone, is done. That was the last moment of it. But then, you know, like you wish we wanted to create a successful business for so long. I've been working on a business for 10 years trying to get something off the ground. And Kristie, maybe, I don't know, several years herself. I'm not sure how long we sort of on the grind.
Oh, 7 years.
7 years.
7 years.
So it finally happened. I was like, holy shit, you know, this is what I've been waiting for so long. And then on the other end of that, like we had so many people coming through our platform. We had so many new clients that we're working with. It was overwhelming. It was intense. And it was like, it took so much of our time and energy. And so it's like on one side of the situation, we were having the impact and we were creating the financial results that we'd always dreamt of. But then we didn't, you know, it was always got to be careful of what you wish for, because we didn't understand what the ramifications and the workload and that would be on the back end of that. And all of a sudden we had to like deal with all these clients while she was pregnant, whilst we're trying to do it, have a relationship. And it was a lot all at once, you know, and we'd never done it before. So it was like so much stuff come up, so many triggers, so many challenges. But it was
how did you stay connected through that? How did you stop or prevent what could have easily led to breakup, I would imagine, with that kind of pressure? Like, what did you kind of put in place to stay connected and keep yourselves grounded in your relationship?
I think we're just like winging it and making up as we go. But I think like honestly,
we were just taking one day at a time. Like I literally had our baby at home, and then 3 days later I was on calls, and that was kind of all we knew at the time of what to do. We didn't have a team back then. We didn't have staff. We didn't, you know, I think we had one PA back then, and you know, we were very like new in you know, being. But
we're just committed in the relationship, you know. So it's like, you know, we're talking to Rory, our video guy, before we jumped on here, and you know, he's also a close friend of ours, and he knows us very well, and he spent a lot of time with us. And we said, you know, how do you feel about our relationship? And, you know, he made a good point. He's like, you guys have a soul contract that you can't get out of. And, you know, it was a joke, but it's actually true. It's like, we have this relationship and we've committed and we're married. We also have a baby together. So it's like, you know, we just sort of, it's going to be challenging. There's wild rides. There's times when we're apart. There's times when we're very distant. There's times when we're going through shit. There's times where we want to like literally strangle each other. And there's times where we don't want to talk to each other. There's times where we want to like make love to each other and rip each other's clothes off and hands off each other and want to spend every day with each other. there's times where we don't want to be near each other. And so, but it's like everything in between. But when you're committed and when you have that soul contract and that purpose that you're here to do and create together, it's like it just brings up everything that's not love for you to heal and look at. And so it's like when you're on that when you have that commitment, it's like you'll just move through whatever as it comes. And we could have been a lot better with like timing, and Kristie talked about like having the time in the morning and not phones on, that sort of stuff. That's very loose, and that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's like, but we have these little things in place. We don't always stick to them, but we do our best. But it's like, we're just sort of doing the best with the tools and where we're at the time, And then sometimes it's like we have times where we're really focused and dialed in. Like right now, we have like a really intense time in the business, and we're really like kicking some big goals. And so that time, the relationship maybe takes a bit of a back seat. But then there's other times where it's like, we have more space and we have more time. So then we'll be a little bit more perhaps in the relationship. So
and we make sure as well, like we go on holidays and we, it's like every day is kind of almost a holiday, but like we make sure that we take that time to get out of our house and go somewhere else, because we also work from home. I think having that separation of actually leaving your house and going somewhere new is really important as well. And so we do that. Like after we ran a really big event at the start of the year, and it took a lot of energy. It took so much energy to hold this container of what we created, and then we were like exhausted. And so I was like, cool, let's get out of here, let's go to Fiji. And we had some really epic time together.
Oh, yeah, I remember
then we moved to Germany for like 3 months.
No, we didn't. So that we find, that we do that, of like actually removing ourselves from the house where we're working, where it's like, everyday life kind of happens, and then, going somewhere new and fresh. And that's where we kind of like also, make sure that we're really focusing a lot on our relationship.
Yeah. And I really like what you said there, Clint, about how you have these rituals and you have these things that you try to do as often as you can, but you don't always do them, right? But it's still having them in place. And we're similar, Gary and I, in that, Sundays are our family days. They're the days that we set aside to be just really connected as a family. And some weeks we do it and some weeks we don't, but it's knowing that that intention is still there that creates that kind of space of, okay, we're in this together. It's almost like, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it's like this team when we're in this together, and this is what the intention is. And it's allowing yourself to be flexible and human within that space as well, right? Because you can't always get it right. You can't always be
exactly
on 100% of the time.
We can have the best intentions, but we're all human, right? We're all just like doing the best that we can. And I think it's great to have those intentions and rituals, and you can stick to them as possible. And there are going to be days where you don't, do everything that you intend. And that's okay as well.
Yeah, awesome. So I want to talk a little bit more about like you two and relating together and how you kind of move through. So we talk about triggers and when we're kind of arguing, and so for those who don't quite understand what the word trigger means, it's more about, when we're having a fight and something sets us off and makes us angry or makes us frustrated, that's essentially a trigger. So it's something that someone does that sets off an emotional feeling within you. So how do you guys kind of navigate like through that? Like, has it always been that you're really conscious and aware, or have you kind of been on this journey together of learning how to really fight effectively?
So I definitely, like with my past relationships, like a fight's been a fight where it's like we've blown up at each other and you're this and you're that and rah, 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 and haven't been able to see the beauty in why is this coming to the surface. And I feel like in this relationship, since we've got together and we have both been on individual kind of like journeys of becoming more conscious and aware, and being able to understand why things happen and how challenges are actually really beautiful, and when there's something that happens in life we can really look at that and reflect on that. And so we've both kind of been on that journey, and then coming together it's like, okay, so since the start, I feel like every kind of fight we've had, it has brought up this really beautiful opportunity to be like, okay, well, what's this bringing up for you, and what's this bringing up for me, and what do we need, what do we actually get to work through here? And so I feel like we don't really fight that much. Like what our kind of thing is that we'll just avoid each other. If there's something going on in the space, we often will just like be distant, and then a couple of days later we're like, hang on, why are we distant? What's coming up? What's going on for you? Like Clint the other day had something going on where he didn't share with me what was happening, and so then he just like stormed off and went and had lunch on his own, and I was like, what's going on, and so I feel like for us it's not so much like we fight in this like rah,
we do
rah,
fight
rah. Well, a little bit, but not like, I don't know, from my past relationships it's very different. Like it's
okay compared to
normally like we'll fight and we'll yell at each other and we'll like
but it's usually that
Kristie
we've
will
been
try and break
distant
the
for a
door,
while.
and then I think that, remember that time in Noosa?
Oh, yeah. I
Anyway, but then,
That's right.
literally like not long after, like we'll look at each other and then we'll like try not to laugh. We're like,
yeah,
you
it
know,
doesn't
we're
last
like,
very long.
it doesn't last long, and then we're like, oh, you're a dickhead, babe, you know, and we'll have this like joke about it, and then we'll tease each other for a little bit, and then it'll just sort of go. Like, it's sort of, we don't stay in that for very long. But yeah, there is stuff that's like, you know, we'll just be going, if we're going through our own process. It's like sometimes I just want to be by myself. Like that walk the other day, I was like, I just needed to go and clear my head and walk along the beach, and I went for a meal, and then by the time I got back, I was like, okay, I'm good now. So I just went.
So from that point though, like when you get back, is it a communication? Do you talk about what happened, or do you just kind of go, I'm good now, and get on with it?
In that sense, I didn't. No, I was like, she goes, what was it? And I said, well, I don't need to share. Like, it's not something that I need to share. It was just something that I was triggered of, that something about Kristie, but it wasn't that. It was something deeper than that. So I went and processed, and was like, it doesn't really matter what I went through. So I don't feel like I need to share.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we will share. So it just depends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you feel about him not wanting to share? Were you okay with that?
I was eventually. I'm more the one that's like, come on, let's share and let's get it out, let's talk about it, and blah blah blah. And yeah, but I do see that like every fight that happens or everything that happens, it's just like, cool, like what's this bringing up for both of us to look at? You know, what do we get to like work on moving forward in this area? So yeah, rather than it being like an explosive fight and then we're like, oh, let's just make up. It's like, no, let's actually look at what's here for us to move through.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think too, like, I just think, you know, we're fucking human, and we're always going to have those times where, like, Gary and I have times where we fucking scream, and I'll storm out and I'll be like, I'm the one that needs to go and walk around the block because I'm so frustrated. But it's that commitment to coming back and actually having that open communication when you need to, like, around what actually happened and how you can move forward, rather than just kind of suppressing it and pushing it down and pretending like it didn't happen. Like, I feel like when you are open and that communication, I think communication is really key in relationships, as hard as it fucking can be. Like, I think that's one thing where a lot of people are probably not quite nailing it, in that we just don't communicate effectively.
Yeah, for sure.
So how do you guys like navigate the harder conversations and the stuff that you're like, oh, I don't want to talk about that, but it needs to be spoken about? Like, how do you kind of move through that? We just don't talk about it.
Build up the courage, and then we just say it, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's like, it's getting through your ego. Because I know for me, like, I can only speak from my experience, but it's like, you know, there's something there that I know just needs to be spoken, or I know it needs to be shared. And I know, like,
have you always been like that though, Clint, or is there something kind of new to you in the last few years? Like, have you always been quite self-aware?
It's been a journey. No, I haven't. I was definitely not self-aware like 5 years ago.
Yeah, probably not. No. Like, no. But I am now, and I know that by, you know, facing it and not burying it, and, you know, speaking truth, and that is very healing. And you know, sometimes you need to own something, and sometimes there's a part of the conversation that, you know, a lot of people would avoid or sweep under the carpet or not own that, because it's like, it's making them look bad or feel judged, or, you know. That's
the vulnerability aspect too, right? Yeah. Being able to step into that vulnerability and share from your heart.
Yeah.
Which
and
can be scary.
Seeing in a certain light. So it's, you know, it's confronting. And but once you then, a lot of times it's more in your head, and you share it and you're like, oh, that wasn't even that bad. You know what I mean? It was just like a little thing, and they don't even, you know, it's not even a big thing. But just by sharing it, brings that healing element and that love back to the space. So that's why I think I've been learning lately. It's like, some things are appropriate for me to share with Kristie, and other things may be appropriate for me to share with like a mentor or a man friend, or something like, and I don't have to then share everything with her. I can have conversations outside of our relationship and, you know, bring resolutions to things. So I'm not bringing everything into the relationship. I'm doing my own healing journey, and I'm on that. And I have people that I talk to and have sounding boards. And then with us, then we do also have our own connection and relation and communication that helps heal our relationship.
And I love that it's like that level of radical self-responsibility, right? And go, well, this is actually not hers to carry. You know, this is me, and that's something that I get to move through. And sometimes it is that case, right? Of needing to speak to someone outside of the relationship to support you through that, rather than bringing it into the relationship, adding another kind of layer or dimension to it of like, oh, something else to kind of work through. Yeah.
And something we're really navigating at the moment is that, you know, like I truly believe we all need coaches in our life, you know, like it's like, like for me, like in business, it's like, I know my life has improved so much since I've had a business coach. And then I know, like, you know, in, just like with health and fitness, every time I've got somebody in my life that's supporting me in that area, like it amplifies, right? And so when we have mentors and coaches in certain areas, and so like for us, even at the moment, we're like, okay, cool, like let's have a relation. Like we've actually done some work with people that specialize in relationships, and found it really, really useful for our relationship. I'm like, well, it doesn't mean like if you work with someone in relationships, it doesn't mean the relationship fit or that it's like failed. Because I feel
Very
like
nice. See someone.
yeah, like I feel like there's a bit of that
It's like
kind of
having
energy,
a PT,
you know, it's like,
yeah.
no, it's like we have coaches in business, we have coaches in our health and fitness, we have coaches in all these areas of our life because we want to improve those areas. So like, I feel it makes sense to actually have a relationship coach or a relationship mentor that you consistently work with, that continues to hold space, that is that person that actually is heavily invested in you guys having the best relationship possible, and it can hold that space for you to talk through things that might be there or whatever. And so we're actually like, I used to have this thing of like, oh no, that means like a relationship's failed if you like see someone, like you know, have to go down that
perfect route. Fuck
yeah, oh shit, I've got to have this report. And it's like, no, like we get to just have someone that we, you know, that we connect with, and that we heavily trust, that can come in, that can support us with certain things, so that we can amplify a relationship, and so that we can, you know, continue to grow it and flourish it and all of those things.
And sometimes you need that outsider perspective, because you can be so in it that you can't actually see what's going on. You know, you're so consumed by all of the finer details and being so in it that you need that person outside to just offer. And it can be one thing. Like I find often when we go and see our guy, that he'll just say one thing and it'll be like, oh fuck yeah,
it's like a realization.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, my love, so I'm a little bit cautious of time, so I'm just going to ask you a few little questions just to wrap it up. So one, what do you believe is the key ingredient to sustaining a really healthy and happy relationship?
Communication.
Boom. Clint, what do you reckon?
The one thing.
One or two. What do you think is key?
Love.
Love and communication. Beautiful. What does the word love mean to you? How do you define love?
I think it's like there's many elements, but like what's coming up is like choosing love, you know, in situations, like instead of like blaming or judging or criticizing or bringing down, you know, and those things still play out, but it's like, how can you bring things back into love? And so it's like, this is within yourself, this is within your other, this is within the relationship. We can be constantly conscious and bringing things back into a space of love, and, you know, bringing it into light and healing and coming back to that space. Then, you know, we're going to be in a more empowered space, and the other is going to be in an empowered space, and so is the relationship. So I think love is key.
Beautiful. And what about you, Kristie? How do you define love?
I see, love is like that divine love energy. And I feel that when, kind of the same thing, like when we can like harmonize things and bring it into love and, you know, pour love on something. It's like we always teach people, like when we're speaking about money, like when you pour love onto money, for example, when you pour love onto another human being, then that amplifies. If we're talking shit about money, or if we're like, you know, in this low vibe state around money, then it's going to show up externally. And if you are, you know, pouring love into that, then it's going to amplify. And so same thing. It's like if we are talking shit about each other, or we're hard on each other, or whatever, it's like, okay, well, that's only going to keep catapulting, and then we're going to create more dis-ease in the relationship. Or if we pour love onto each other and be like, and hold also a space for each other to pour love onto each other, and yet also communicate effectively. It's not has to be all like rainbows and lollipops. It's like, oh yeah, let's just pour love onto it. It's like, no, like we get to hold a loving space for each other whilst also speaking our truth and being honest and communicating.
Love's not always fluffy. Love's like direct and piercing and
truth.
Yeah. Truth. Yes, absolutely. All right. So where do you believe that most people are getting it wrong?
In relationships?
Wrong. Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know. I feel like we're like not relationship experts. We're, we're just like everyday humans that are still working the whole thing out. But
I feel there's a lot of wounds, and so when people they have, instead of being in a relationship, they're in a wound ship, and there's something that was like unmet within themselves, and then so that drew them together, and then they're still operating from this wound, and it just keeps playing out. So without taking self-responsibility and going on a healing journey for yourself, you'll still stay within those wounds, and it'll keep creating the same dynamics. So if we can really heal ourselves, and that's all you can ever do, you can't heal your partner, but if you can heal yourself, then those wounds will dissipate within you, and then that'll no longer play out in the relationship.
Yeah. So it's really looking at how you're showing up in the relationship as opposed to focusing all your attention outwardly on your partner and how they're showing up. Because when we shift ourselves, right, they shift automatically. The experience.
I feel as well there's a lot of like people that get into relationships and then it becomes really needy, and that relationship is the thing that kind of provides love in their life. And we can only really be responsible for the love that goes on internally, right? Like nothing external can really allow us to feel love. And so like I've seen this in, in my past relationships and, in other people's relationships of like almost this, like a desperation or need, or that like if that person goes away, then like, oh my God, the other person's going to be so lost without them. And, like this kind of neediness, whereas like, I find that for us, whenever we give each other space, and this is something we used to do at the start of our relationship that worked really well before we had a baby, was we used to intentionally like spend time apart, like Clint would go away for 10 days or I'd go away for a week or whatever it might be. And every time we did that and we had our own space and our time to ourselves, when we came back together, it was always like, like it was so refreshing, but it wasn't like this need of like, oh my God, I miss you so much and I can't like do my life without you and blah, blah, blah. Like there wasn't that energy. And I feel that that's so important, is to have that space and to have your own time, because it's important. Like if you're in each other's space all the time, you're just like smothering each other. And so I find that with us, like we don't really have that kind of needy energy. It's more like if he goes away, like he's gone overseas a couple of times since we've had a baby, and I went away once, and it was amazing. It was amazing. It was the best. Like we actually spent a whole month apart in May, and it was the best thing. One of the best things we've ever done for our relationship was to really give each other that space, and not like we didn't even speak in that time. Like we probably spoke like twice in the whole month. Like
Kristie called me and she said, "Babe, do you miss me?" I said, "Sorry, who is this?"
What? Wife? Who?
Whereas like, I guess some people don't want to like have that time or space, or they don't want to be alone because it's like they're associating their love in their life that they're receiving based on being with that person constantly.
So they're desperately holding on to something. And when we're in that space, like you're literally putting your love and your happiness and your fulfillment and your joy in other people's hands, and that can be taken apart. That can be taken away from you in a heartbeat, right? So we have zero control over that, and the control we do have is on what's going on within us and creating that space. So I really love that.
Yeah. And I think like you asked a question before, and really just love to add on to it really quickly, is around vision. I see a lot of people who in their relationship, their wife or their husband may not agree with the direction that they want to go in their life, or they're actually scared that the other person is growing. So I see where like people try and kind of stay the same because they don't want to outgrow their partner, or they do want to keep growing, but their partner is keeping them limited based on their level of work that partner has done. And I feel that that's a huge issue in relationships, if that people can't, like the other person can't support what the other person wants to do, and actually like cultivating a very similar vision. So it doesn't need to be that you have the exact same business or anything like that, but what do you want for your life? Like, what do you want to, like, what do you ultimately, because if one person has a vision that's like this direction and one has a vision that's this direction, and one's growing in this direction, one's growing in that direction, I feel it's very hard for it to come together. And I think when we can accept the other person's growth and actually take it as an opportunity for us to also grow in that area and keep kind of meeting each other, like that's what I find in our relationship is like, Clint might go through this big journey of like in our relationship, he went through a very deep spiritual kind of awakening area, and I was sort of not in that space, and then I grew in that area, and then I grew in a business and was really like succeeding in that area, and then he stepped up, and then he stepped up in business, and then I stepped up, and then so we've always like accepted each other's growth and actually supported that. And even though that's been triggering at times to see the other grow in a particular area, it's just showing us where we now get to grow. And that's what I see as such a big issue in the relationships that I see and the people that I speak to, is that, you know, they're like, oh, like I really want to do this like business, or I really want to do this thing in my life, but my husband doesn't support it. And I'm like, if you're truly in a relationship that's based on like divine love with somebody, then you want like, it's only that person's own stuff. And so I totally agree with what Clint was saying. The more that we can heal our own stuff and our own insecurities and like be a sovereign being, that we don't need to have the other person in our, you know, it's not like don't need to have the other person in our life to actually like be complete, but it's like, I see people that, you know, may have reached a point in their relationship where actually they'd probably be better off going in separate directions, you know, because they're not meeting each other in growth. They're not meeting each other in the vision. And yet they're like, oh no, I can't grow, or I can't do this vision because of my husband. So I'm just going to stay where I am. And that's going to be fulfilled. Yeah. I feel like that's such a big thing, is that like having those conversations around what do we actually ultimately want for our life together? And can we work through that together? And also then supporting each other with the direction and growth that each other wants to have.
Yeah, awesome. And I have to say that was the triggering point, because I obviously am on a very much a spiritual journey, and I've grown massively since about November. I've gone on a huge journey, and Gary had stayed the same. So I got to a point where I was like, I feel like I'm outgrowing you. I'm so disconnected. And that was the point where we went, okay, let's get some support. And now he's coming to meet me. And it's really amazing that he's stepping into that. So I get to go on my journey and allow that to be a light for him to like come along as well. Yes. Or if they still refuse, then you make those tough decisions, right? And go, okay, well, this isn't going to work. But yeah, it's beautiful. I love that. All right. So last one, is there one piece of parting information you would like to leave our viewers and listeners with? What would it be?
Parting information.
Tips and tricks.
I think for us, it's like have fun and like we're really like, you know, playful. Like really playful. We talk to each other like babies, and you know, we do silly faces and silly noises, and like people are actually
allow our inner child to really.
If people actually watch this, they'll be like, "What the fuck are these guys on?" But we just really keep it like fun and light, and you know, we have a lot of fun in our relationship. We're laughing a lot, and you know, same thing with our son. Like we really, you know, play with him like we're a child, you know, and then we bring that within the family. So I think that really keeps it like childish and fun, and it's the inner child being, you know, expressed and healed, and just keeps it interesting.
Yeah, beautiful. Do you have anything to add to that, Kristie, or?
I don't know, the one thing. I'm just trying to think. I just really feel communication and doing your own work on yourself, and really always trying to become the best person that you can possibly become. And I just feel that when you do that individual work, like it then amplifies the relationship, and that's what we found. It's like when we're really committed on doing our own individual healing work, then we're able to come together a lot more. So
beautiful. Awesome. Well, thank you, my love.
Thanks,
so much
Nikki,
for being here. For anyone who wants to connect with you guys, whatever, I'll drop all your socials in the description. But yeah, thank you so much for investing your beautiful, special, valuable time.
Yay. Thanks for having us.
No worries.
Bye.
Thanks, Nikki.
Hey, beautiful humans. So how was that? Oh my gosh, are they amazing? I freaking love them so much. Clint is hilarious. Kristie is just such a fierce feminine queen, and the two of them have been through so much together, right? To get to where they are now, and how beautifully committed they are to the relationship and their self-awareness and all of the things that it takes for them to make their relationship thrive. So I hope that you got so much value out of that, and are feeling a little bit less pressured to create this perfect relationship that just doesn't simply exist, right? I hope that this is starting to land for you guys. It just does not exist. So if you haven't done so already, please make sure you head over and join me on Facebook, Nikki Syme, NIKIISYME, and Instagram at Nikki Syme, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'm also would love for you to share this with anybody who you think needs to see this. This message and the series is so important for the mental health of all human beings. And it's really, really important to me to get it out to as many people as possible. And I can't do that without you guys. So I would love it if you hit that share button as well and tag some besties in it that need to see this message. All right, my loves, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, whatever it is that you are doing. And I will be seeing you very, very soon for episode 4. Mwah. Bye.